Hey there! Last time I covered the fundamentals of Unity's input system, and if you've missed it, the link's in the description. This time I'm taking it further. I'll show you how to create your own input action asset, how to enable it, and how to bind multiple buttons to the same action, or multiple actions to the same button. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications, it really helps. Now, buckle up. Let's do a quick recap for those of you who haven't watched the previous video. What I have here is an input controller that references input actions via serialized fields, subscribes and unsubscribes from those actions, and in the callback methods updates the movement handler with the most recent input value. The movement handler in turn moves and animates the character on the screen who is able to move and jump around. So far, I've used the default input action asset with many pre-configured actions, but with input system we can have unlimited number of configurations for different use cases. To create an asset, I can right-click anywhere in the project window, then select Create and then Input Actions. Name it wherever you like. If I wanted this asset to be my default project-wide asset, I could drag it here, but I don't really want to, so I'll revert the change. Now, there are multiple ways to modify the asset. The project-wide asset can be modified here in the project settings, but any asset can either be double-clicked or you can select it and press the Edit Asset button in the inspector. And it'll open a window similar to the one we saw in the project settings. There are 5 sections here. The Control Scheme section, which we'll cover sometime in the future, the Save section, and then there's 3 sections we'll concentrate on today. First, Action Maps. Action maps are logical groups of actions. In the default asset, Unity created 2 maps, one for player control and one for UI navigation. But they can be used for other scenarios as well. For example, in a GTA-style game, you might have an action map for character controls and an action map for vehicle controls. To create an action map, I'll press the plus button and give it a name. There's also a context menu where you can perform your regular stuff like renaming, duplicating, or deleting a map. When an action map is created, it comes with an empty action that has an empty binding. Actions are, well, actions. There's something you expect to be performed regardless of buttons, sticks, or triggers. Things like jumping, moving, rotating, and so on. Bindings are the actual buttons that trigger the action. And then there's the Properties section. When a binding is selected, we see binding properties. If I select an action, the Properties section changes to Action Properties. Let's start with a simple action. I'll rename the default action here to Jump, and for the sake of this example, I'll delete the default binding, but you don't really need to do this. Now, let's take a look at the action settings. What we'll need now is the action type. In the previous video, we saw that each action has 3 events: started, performed, and cancelled. This property determines how those events are fired. We have 3 options here, but for now, let's concentrate on the default one: button. With button, started event will be called when the button begins to be pressed, performed when the press passes a certain threshold we can configure, and cancelled when the button returns to its default position. Confusing? Think of it this way. The default state of a button is 0, while the press state is 1. On a keyboard, when you press a key, it goes straight from 0 to 1, so the started and performed events will be fired at the same time. On the other hand, on a controller you have trigger buttons. Those triggers can be pressed lightly or fully, generating different values between 0 and 1. This means you get to choose what is considered pressed: 30%, 50%, or maybe 100%. Unity has a default press point configure in the project settings under Input System Package and then Settings, and it's set to 50%. But if you really want to, you can override this value per button with an interaction. But we'll leave that for later. We'll also skip the rest of the properties for now. Let's concentrate on adding a binding. To create a new binding, I need to press the small plus button in the action row. The menu here is context-aware, so it will be different for different action types. For now, I'll create a simple binding. Currently, it's empty, so let's bind the spacebar. And this is done through the path property. There are 3 ways to bind a button. You can traverse the categories and scroll until you find the desired button. You can search for the button in the search bar and select the one you want, or you can press the Listen button and then press the button you want. For me, it's the spacebar on the keyboard. Now, let's create a movement action. This time, I'll set the action type to value. With this type, similarly to button, the started event will be fired when the value of the control changes from its default state, and the cancelled event will be fired when the value returns to its default state. But unlike button, the performed event will be fired on every value change. Additionally, with this type, we can choose the value we're expecting to receive. Similarly to get access on the old input manager, we need a vector2 here as the return value. Now I need to get rid of the binding here, because this binding is for a single button and won't provide me with the data I'm expecting. Because I've selected the data type, the context menu of the plus button has changed a bit. And now I can select the up, down, left, right composite binding. You see how it's different from the button binding we have in the jump action? It actually combines multiple bindings into a single value, and it allows us to select what button corresponds to what value. I'll go ahead and bind all of them. W for up, S for down, A for left, and D for right. Now I'll rename this binding to WASD. I don't have to do it, but naming things makes it easier in the future. You know what? I want to be able to move with the arrow keys as well. So what I can do is duplicate the binding, rename it, and assign the arrow keys to it. Now the move action will be triggered both by the WASD and by the arrow keys. One last thing. For the changes to take effect, I need to save the asset. Now in the character component, I can assign the newly created actions. For movement, I'll select the move action from the vampire asset. And for jumping, I'll select the jump action from the same asset. Let's enter play mode and see it in action. The character is not moving. No matter what I press, it just refuses to move or jump. Actually, there's an explanation for this. The thing is, with input system, you can potentially have thousands of input action assets lying around. Considering it's a pretty complex system, if all of them were calculating just because they exist, the game would take a significant performance hit. So Unity allows us to choose what and when to enable or disable. The whole asset, one of its maps, or even a specific action. Up until now, we've used the project-wide asset, which is enabled automatically when the application starts. Now we need to enable our own. Let's keep it simple. I'll create a serialized field for the asset I created earlier, and now I can enable and disable it. A good practice is to enable it during onEnable and disable it during onDisable. But there might be cases where you do it elsewhere, even not as part of character's lifecycle. Now in the editor, I'll need to assign the asset to the serialized field, and I can finally enter play mode expecting everything to work. And sure enough, it's working. I can move, rotate, and even jump. If only I could fly. From the code side, it's pretty easy. All I need to do is just to duplicate and adjust the jump handling. First, a reference to the input action. Then I can copy the event subscription code, and I'll have to change the variable name and the method names here. I shouldn't forget about the unsubscription either. Nobody likes memory leaks. Lastly, I need to implement the callbacks. My movement handler already knows how to handle flying. I just need to notify it when the fly button is pressed so it can consume the request, and also notify it when the fly button is released, telling it that we no longer want to fly. Now, I could create a new fly action and assign a new button binding to it, but I think using the spacebar both for jumping and for flying could be more fun. I'll start by duplicating the jump action and renaming it to fly. But this will just cause an issue in our code. While completely legal, my code will just trigger the jump and the flight at the same time. And I don't want that. What I do want is for flight to be activated only if the button is pressed for a specific amount of time. Let's say half a second. To do that, I can add an interaction by pressing the small plus button in the Interactions section of the Action Properties. As you can see, there are multiple interaction types here, and you're welcome to explore them, but for now, I'll need the hold interaction. Interactions change how input system reacts to bindings. The hold interaction will trigger the started event the moment the button changed its value from a default one, and it will trigger the performed event only if the button value stays above the press point for the duration of the hold time. Here you can see the default values from the input settings, but I can easily override them by unchecking the default checkbox and entering the value I want, which is 0.5. Now I can save the asset and assign the newly created fly action to the input controller. Let's run it and wait for it to load. Now, if I press and release the spacebar, the vampire just jumps. But if I press and hold the button, after half a second, the vampire will start flying. And if I release the spacebar during flight, the vampire falls down. Now, there's a bit of logic duplication here. Remember how I said that in jump action, the started and performed events will trigger simultaneously, while in the flight action they won't? This raises a question. Do we really need the jump action? I mean, I guess we do, because to save ourselves the trouble in the future, we should be more descriptive. But for the sake of this example, I'll just delete the jump action and save the asset. Now I'll need to make a few adjustments in the code. First, I'll delete the reference for the jump action. We no longer need it. This causes compilation errors. I'll go ahead and replace the jump action reference with the fly action reference everywhere. Lastly, instead of the performed event, I'll use the started event for the jump and leave the fly action as is. And nothing to do in the editor. I already deleted the action itself, and changes to the code remove the serialized field. Let's enter play mode and see what we've got. The result is actually the same. When I press the spacebar, it triggers the started event, and only if I hold it long enough, the perform event is triggered, making us fly. And now you know how to create your own input action asset, set up action maps, bindings, and even bind multiple actions to the same button using interactions. But there's still more to cover. Type safety, rebinding, and a lot of other powerful features that make input system truly shine. If you found this helpful, hit that like button, subscribe, and press the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. I've got more input system content coming, plus plenty of other Unity topics in the pipeline. Keep on creating, and I'll see you in the next one.